What if I told you that the weight you've been carrying, the one that sits in your chest when you lie awake at night, replaying conversations that ended years ago, the one that tightens your throat when you pass by places that used to mean something, the one that makes you scroll through old messages searching for clues you've already found 100 times before? What if I told you that this weight is not actually the past itself, but you need to understand it, to resolve it, to extract from? It's some final meaning that will let you move forward. Most people spend years, sometimes entire lifetimes, waiting for closure, waiting for the other person to finally say the right words, waiting for circumstances to align in a way that makes sense, waiting for permission from the universe to stop hurting. But there's something most of us overlook, not because it is hidden in some esoteric teaching or buried in ancient texts, but because we have been taught to look outward for answers when the real transformation, the one that actually frees us, happens in a place so quiet, so interior, that we often mistake it for nothing at all. You might have felt it already, perhaps in a moment you didn't think to mark as significant. Maybe it was an afternoon when you were sitting alone, and for the first time in months, you realized you hadn't thought about them. Or maybe it was the absence of that familiar ache when their name appeared somewhere unexpectedly. It wasn't dramatic. There was no lightning bolt of understanding, no cinematic revelation. It was more like noticing that a sound you'd grown so accustomed to had finally stopped, and the silence left behind felt not empty, but strangely full. These moments, these small shifts in the interior landscape of your being, they're not coincidences. Nothing that happens inside you is ever coincidence. Every tightening, every release, every sudden clarity, and every fog that descends, they're all part of a process that is far more intelligent than the conscious mind that tries so desperately to control it. This process, this quiet unfolding that happens beneath the surface of your daily thoughts, it does not announce itself. It does not send you notifications or mark its progress with visible milestones. It works in the dark, in the hours you spend staring at the ceiling, in the dreams you half remember, in the way your body tenses when certain songs play, and then one day, inexplicably, doesn't. Carl Jung spent his life mapping these invisible territories, not because he wanted to create a system or a doctrine, but because he recognized that the psyche has its own language, its own timing, its own way of bringing what is hidden into the light. He understood that the unconscious does not operate according to the rules of logic or linear time. It speaks in patterns, in repetitions, in symbols that appear again and again until we finally stop and notice. And one of the most profound patterns he observed was this: that we do not heal by understanding everything, but by integrating what we can and releasing our grip on what we cannot. Synchronicity, that strange phenomenon where outer events seem to mirror inner states, is not magic. It is the universe reflecting back to you what you are ready to see. When you stop needing closure, when you stop demanding that the past rearrange itself into a story that makes you feel better, something shifts in the way you perceive reality itself. Suddenly, the world is no longer divided into wounds that need healing and people who owe you explanations. It becomes, instead, a field of experience, neutral and vast, where you are free to move without dragging behind you the accumulated weight of every unfinished conversation, every unanswered question, every relationship that ended without the neat conclusion you were promised it would have. In this video, I will share with you 7 inner shifts, 7 subtle signs that indicate you have stopped needing closure, that you're no longer trapped by the past, even if you didn't realize the trap was there to begin with. These are not steps to follow or goals to achieve. They are recognitions, small moments of awareness that, when you notice them, reveal that a transformation has already taken place inside you. Some of these signs may feel familiar, like memories of something you experienced but didn't have words for. Others may feel confronting, because they ask you to see yourself in a way that the ego resists. But if you stay with this until the end, you may find that recent experiences, the ones that felt confusing or painful or strangely empty, were not signs of failure or regression, but preparation. The psyche prepares us long before we are consciously ready. It begins the work in the shadows, and only later, sometimes much later, do we look back and realize that we were being led somewhere all along. The first sign is so subtle that you might dismiss it entirely, and that dismissal itself is part of why it takes so long to recognize. It begins with a kind of forgetting, but not the forced forgetting that comes from trying to push something out of your mind. This is different. This is the organic forgetting that happens when something is no longer feeding on your attention. You stop checking their social media, not because you made a rule or blocked them or asked a friend to hold you accountable, but because one day you simply forget to look, and then another day passes, and another. And when you finally do remember, there is no rush of guilt or fear that you've lost your connection to the past. There is just a quiet observation. Oh, I haven't thought about that in a while. This forgetting is not erasure. The memories are still there. If someone asks, you can recall the details, the timeline, the things that were said. But the emotional charge has dimmed. It no longer pulls at you. It no longer demands that you return to it again and again, searching for something you never quite find. This kind of forgetting feels almost like a betrayal at first, especially if you're someone who has built an identity around your wounds, around the story of what was done to you, around the narrative that you're the person who loved too much, who was left without explanation, who deserved better. There is a strange loyalty we develop to our pain. We hold on to it because it proves something. It proves we cared. It proves we were wronged. It proves we are deep, sensitive, capable of profound feeling. To let it go, to forget even for a moment, feels like we're saying it didn't matter. But this is where the misunderstanding lives. Letting go of the need for closure does not mean the past didn't matter. It means you are no longer using the past to define the present. You are no longer asking it to give you something it was never designed to give. Jung spoke often about the shadow, that part of ourselves we refuse to see, the qualities and experiences we push away because they threaten the image we want to maintain. But there is another kind of shadow, one that is less talked about. It is the shadow of the future, the life you could be living if you were not still standing in the ruins of what already ended, waiting for someone to come back and help you rebuild. When you stop needing closure, you stop feeding that shadow. You stop sacrificing the future on the altar of the past. And this does not happen because you decided to be strong or because you read the right book or because enough time passed. It happens because something inside you, something older and wiser than your conscious mind, finally says, enough. We are going now. And you follow, not because you understand where you're going, but because staying has become more exhausting than moving. People around you may not notice this shift. In fact, they probably won't. You are not suddenly happier or more confident or radiating some new energy. You are simply quieter about certain things. You stop bringing them up. You stop needing to tell the story over and over, shaping it slightly differently each time, hoping that this version will finally make sense. You stop asking your friends if they think you did the right thing, if you should reach out one more time, if maybe there is still a chance for understanding. Not because you have the answers now, but because the questions themselves have lost their urgency. This is not apathy. Apathy is a numbing, a shutting down. This is clarity. This is the difference between a wound that is still open and one that is closed, not because someone stitched it, but because the body did what the body knows how to do when it is no longer being torn open again and again by your own hand. There is a bodily component to this that we often ignore because we are so trained to live in our heads, to think our way through pain, to analyze and interpret and make meaning. But the body knows before the mind does. The body has been keeping score all along. It knows the difference between true rest and the exhausted collapse that comes from fighting something that cannot be fought. When you stop needing closure, your body starts to soften in ways you didn't know it was holding. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. You sleep differently. Not necessarily better, but differently. The dreams change. Instead of endlessly replaying scenarios, trying to fix them, trying to say the thing you didn't say, the dreams become more abstract, more symbolic. You wake up and you cannot remember the details, but you feel something has shifted. This is the unconscious doing its work. This is integration happening below the level of conscious thought. The second sign is harder to name because it involves a kind of inner solitude that our culture teaches us to fear. We are told that healing happens in community, in connection, in talking things through, in being witnessed and validated. And there is truth in that. But there is also a stage of healing that can only happen alone, in the kind of silence that makes most people reach for their phone, turn on the television, call a friend, do anything to avoid the vast emptiness that seems to open up when there is nothing left to fix. When you stop needing closure, You become able to sit in that emptiness without filling it. You stop interpreting silence as abandonment. You stop seeing solitude as evidence that you are unlovable or broken or too much or not enough. You begin to recognize that the silence is not empty at all. It is full of something that has no name, something that has been waiting for you to stop running, stop explaining, stop defending, stop needing. This is where many people turn back. This is where the discomfort becomes so acute that they reach out to the person they were trying to let go of. Not because they have anything new to say, but because the silence feels like death. And in a way it is. It is the death of the old self, the one who needed the story to be different, who needed the other person to acknowledge their pain, who needed the past to be resolved before the future could begin. Jung called this process the encounter with the self. And he was clear that it is not a pleasant experience. It is disorienting. It strips away the identities you have built, the roles you have played, the narratives you have clung to. It asks you to sit with the possibility that you will never know why things happen the way they did, that you will never get the apology, the explanation, the acknowledgement you deserve. And it asks you to live anyway, not in bitterness, not in resignation, but in a kind of radical acceptance that does not mean approval, but simply means this is what is. You might find yourself in this stage doing strange things, things that don't fit the image of someone who is healing. You might spend an entire Saturday doing nothing, and instead of feeling guilty, you feel relief. You might cancel plans not because you're depressed, but because being alone feels more honest than performing okayness for people who expect you to be over it by now. You might start noticing small things, the way light falls through a window, the sound of rain, the taste of your coffee, and these small things start to matter more than the big questions you used to obsess over. This is not distraction. This is presence. This is what it feels like to stop living in the past and start inhabiting your actual life, the one that is happening right now, in this moment, regardless of whether the past has been neatly tied up or not. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with this stage, and it is important to name it, because otherwise you might think you're doing something wrong. It is the loneliness of outgrowing the version of yourself that other people knew. Your friends still see you as the person who was hurt, who needed support, who had that thing happen to them, and you're not that person anymore. Or at least, you're not only that person. But you don't know how to explain this without sounding like you're pretending to be fine, like you're bypassing your pain, like you're one of those people who read a self-help book and suddenly think they are enlightened. So you say less. You withdraw a little, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet way. You stop updating people on your inner process because the inner process has become too subtle, too interior, to translate into the language of casual conversation. And this can feel isolating, but is also strangely freeing. Because for the first time, you're not performing your healing for an audience. You are just living it, in private, in the dark, where all real transformation happens. The third sign is one that many people mistake for regression, and this misunderstanding can cause them to panic and undo the very progress they have made. It is the return of the memories, but not in the way they used to come. Before, the memories were intrusive. They ambushed you. You would be in the middle of something ordinary, grocery shopping or driving or talking to a coworker, and suddenly you were back there, in that moment, feeling everything as if no time had passed at all. The memory had power over you. It controlled your emotional state. It could ruin your day, your week, your month. But now, when the memories come, they come differently. They're softer. They have edges, boundaries. You can observe them without being consumed by them. You can think about the past without falling into it. This is a profound shift, and it is easy to miss because we expect healing to mean the memories stop coming altogether. But that is not how the psyche works. The psyche does not erase. It integrates. It takes what was fragmented and sharp and unbearable, and it smooths it, shapes it, fits it into the larger story of who you are becoming. When this starts to happen, you might find yourself doing something that would have been impossible before. You might think about them, about what happened, and feel something other than pain. You might feel curiosity. You might feel compassion, not the forced kind that you try to manufacture because you thought it would make you a better person, but the real kind that arises naturally when you're no longer defending yourself against them. You might even feel gratitude, not for what they did, but for what you discovered about yourself in the aftermath. And this does not mean you condone their behavior or that you want them back in your life, or that you have forgiven in the way that people talk about forgiveness, as if it is a gift you give to someone else. This is a different kind of forgiveness. It is a release. It is the moment you stop needing them to be different so that you can be okay. Jung wrote about the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming who you truly are, and he was clear that this process involves integrating the opposites within yourself. You are not just the wounded one. You are also the one who wounds. You are not just the one who is abandoned. You are also the one who is left. You are not just the victim of circumstance. You are also the creator of your own life, even when it doesn't feel that way. When you stop needing closure, you stop splitting the world into good and bad, right and wrong, the one who hurt and the one who was hurt. You start to see the complexity, the nuance, the ways in which everyone, including you, is doing the best they can with the consciousness they have. This does not excuse harmful behavior. It does not mean you have to let people back into your life who have proven they cannot be trusted. It simply means you stop carrying them with you as evidence of your victimhood. You stop using the past as proof that the world is against you, that love is dangerous, that you are too broken to ever be whole. There is a particular kind of freedom that comes when you realize you do not need anyone to validate your experience. For so long, you needed them to admit what they did, to see your pain, to acknowledge that they were wrong. And maybe they never will. Maybe they have rewritten the story in their own mind, and in their version, you are the villain, or at best, a footnote. Maybe they have moved on so completely that they rarely think of you at all. And once, this would have destroyed you. The idea that you mattered so little, that your pain was so invisible, that they could just walk away and be fine while you were left in pieces. But now, you understand something you didn't before. Their story is not your story. Their version of events does not have to match yours for your experience to be real. You do not need their acknowledgement to give yourself permission to heal. You do not need their closure to create your own. This realization often comes in the form of a small, almost mundane moment. You're talking to someone new, or you're writing in your journal, or you're simply sitting quietly, and you realize that you have stopped waiting. You have stopped checking your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. You have stopped rehearsing what you would say if you ran into them. You have stopped imagining the conversation where they finally understand, where they apologize, where everything is made right. Not because you have given up hope, but because hope itself has transformed. It is no longer hope for the past to change. It is hope for the future to unfold, whatever that future looks like, with or without their participation. This is the moment you reclaim your energy. This is the moment you stop feeding the ghost of what was and start nourishing what is. The fourth sign is one that can feel almost disorienting because it challenges the narrative you have been telling yourself about who you are. For so long, your identity has been shaped by what happened to you. You were the person who was betrayed, who was left, who was misunderstood, who loved someone who could not love them back. This identity, painful as it is, has provided a kind of structure. It has given you a role to play, a story to tell, a reason for why things are the way they are. But when you stop needing closure, this identity begins to dissolve. And what is left is both terrifying and liberating. You start to ask yourself, who am I without this story? Who am I if I am not defined by what was done to me? Who am I if I am not the wounded one, the one who needs to be handled carefully, the one who has a legitimate reason for being guarded and closed off? These questions do not have easy answers, and the process of exploring them can feel like you're losing yourself rather than finding yourself. You might go through a period where you feel strangely empty, like you have no personality, no preferences, no clear sense of direction. This is normal. This is what happens when you shed an old skin. There's always a vulnerable period where the new skin has not yet hardened, where you are raw and exposed and unsure. Jung called this the process of dissolution, and it is a necessary stage in any real transformation. You cannot become something new while still clinging to the old. You cannot step into a larger version of yourself while still insisting that you are the small, hurt version that the past created. Something has to die, and that something is not you. It is the idea of you, the story of you, the limited, fixed, frozen version of you that could not move forward because it was still chained to what was. During this stage, you might find yourself experimenting with new ways of being. You might try on different identities, different styles, different social circles. You might make choices that surprise the people who thought they knew you. You might say no to things you used to say yes to, and yes to things you used to avoid. This is not a midlife crisis or a manic episode or a sign that you're losing your mind. This is what it looks like when someone stops living according to a script written by their past and starts improvising based on what they actually want right now, in this moment. It is messy. It is awkward. You will make mistakes. You will overcompensate in some areas and undercompensate in others. But all of this is part of the process. All of this is how you discover who you are when you're not performing a role, when you're not trying to make sense of what happened, when you're not waiting for permission to move on. People in your life may react to this with confusion or even hostility. They may accuse you of changing, of not being yourself, of becoming someone they don't recognize. And they are right. You are changing. You are becoming someone they don't recognize because you are becoming someone you don't fully recognize yet either. But this is not a betrayal of your true self. This is a return to it. The person you were when you were still trapped by the past, still waiting for closure, still needing the story to make sense, that was not your true self. That was your defended self, your traumatized self, yourself in survival mode. The person you are becoming, the one who can sit with uncertainty, who can let go of the need to know, who can move forward without all the answers. This is closer to who you actually are. This is the self that was always there, waiting beneath the layers of hurt and confusion and unmet need. There is a particular kind of grief that accompanies this transformation, and it is important to acknowledge it because otherwise you might think something has gone wrong. It is the grief of realizing that you wasted time. You spent months, maybe years, waiting for something that was never going to come. You put your life on hold. You turned down opportunities, avoided risks, kept yourself small and safe, all because you were still entangled with the past. And now that you are finally free, or at least freer, you look back and you see all that lost time, and it hurts. This grief is real, and it deserves to be felt. But it is also important not to let it become a new trap. You cannot change the past. You cannot get back the time you spent waiting. But you can choose, right now, not to waste any more time grieving the time you already lost. This is the paradox. You have to feel the grief in order to move through it. But you cannot dwell in it because dwelling in it is just another way of staying stuck. The fifth sign is one that often surprises people because it seems counterintuitive. You would think that when you stop needing closure, you would stop thinking about the past altogether. But that is not what happens. Instead, you start to think about it differently. You start to see it not as a wound that needs healing, but as a chapter that taught you something. You start to extract meaning, not in the desperate way you did before, trying to make sense of why they did what they did, but in a more expansive way. You start to see patterns. You start to notice the ways in which that relationship, that ending, that loss, was actually showing you something about yourself, about your patterns, about the places where you're not yet whole. And this noticing does not come from self-blame. It does not come from the voice that says you deserved it, or you should have known better. It comes from a place of curiosity, of genuine inquiry. It comes from the part of you that is interested in growth, in evolution, in becoming more conscious. Jung believed that everything that happens to us, especially the painful things, is an opportunity for the unconscious to become conscious. The relationships that hurt us the most are often the ones that reveal our deepest wounds, the places where we are still operating from childhood patterns, from unexamined beliefs, from fears we have never named. When you stop needing closure from the other person, you start to find closure within yourself by understanding what the experience was trying to teach you. And this is not about justifying their behavior or taking responsibility for things that were not your fault. It is about recognizing that you are not a passive victim of circumstance. You are an active participant in your own life, and every experience, even the ones that felt like they were happening to you, was also happening for you, in the sense that it was revealing something that needed to be seen. This stage requires a level of honesty that can be uncomfortable. It requires you to look at the ways in which you might have ignored red flags because you were afraid of being alone. It requires you to acknowledge the ways in which you might have stayed in something that was no longer serving you because leaving felt harder than staying. It requires you to see the ways in which you might have given your power away, not because the other person took it, but because you handed it over, hoping that they would take care of it. that they would validate you, that they would make you feel whole. And when you start to see these patterns, it can be tempting to spiral into shame. But shame is just another trap. Shame keeps you small. Shame keeps you stuck. What is needed here is not shame, but compassion. Compassion for the version of you that did not know what you know now. Compassion for the version of you that was doing the best they could with the tools they had. Compassion for the version of you that believed love was supposed to hurt, that believed you had to earn affection, that believed your worth was determined by whether someone chose to stay. When you stop needing closure, you also stop needing to be right. You stop needing to prove that you were the good one, the one who tried harder, the one who loved more. You stop keeping score. You stop replaying the arguments in your mind, refining your points, imagining what you should have said. You stop needing to win a battle that is already over. This does not mean you excuse bad behavior or pretend that everything was fine. It means you recognize that holding on to the need to be right is just another way of staying connected to the past. It is just another way of giving your energy to something that can no longer give you anything back. And when you finally let go of the need to be right, you discover something unexpected. You discover that being free is better than being right. You discover that peace is better than vindication. You discover that your life, your actual present moment life, is more interesting and more full of possibility than any story you could tell about what happened before. The sixth sign is perhaps the most subtle, and it involves a shift in your relationship to time itself. When you are trapped by the past, time feels distorted. The past feels more real than the present. You're constantly looking backward, replaying, analyzing, trying to understand. The future feels either terrifying or non-existent because you cannot imagine moving forward while still carrying this weight. But when you stop needing closure, time starts to move differently. The present becomes more vivid. You start to notice things you were too distracted to see before. You start to feel things you were too numb to feel. You start to make choices based on what you want now, not on what you think will finally heal the wound from before. This is not about living in the moment in some superficial, Instagram-worthy way. This is about actually inhabiting your life, being in your body, feeling your feelings, making decisions from a place of presence rather than reaction. You might notice this shift in small ways. You stop saying things like, once I get over this, then I'll, and you start just doing the things you were waiting to do. You stop putting your life on hold. You stop treating the present as a waiting room for a future that will arrive once you have healed enough, once you have figured it all out, once you have become the person you think you need to be. You start to understand that healing is not a destination. It is not a place you arrive at where everything is resolved and you are finally whole. Healing is a process, and it is happening right now, in the middle of the mess, in the middle of the uncertainty, in the middle of not knowing. And you can live your life while you are healing. You can take risks, make plans, fall in love again, pursue your dreams, all while still carrying some unresolved pieces of the past. You do not have to be perfect or complete or fully healed to deserve a full life. Jung spoke about the concept of the eternal now, the idea that past, present, and future are not as separate as we think, that they are all happening simultaneously in the psyche. When you are trapped by the past, you are living in a version of the eternal now, where the past is constantly bleeding into the present, contaminating it, making it impossible to experience anything fresh or new. But when you stop needing closure, you start to experience a different version of the eternal now, one where the past is integrated, where it informs the present without dominating it, where the future is open and full of possibility, because you are no longer dragging behind you the weight of everything that did not work out the way you hoped. This is not about forgetting or pretending the past did not happen. This is about changing your relationship to it, so that it becomes a part of your story rather than the entire story. There is a lightness that comes with this shift, and it is not the lightness of denial or avoidance. It is the lightness of someone who has put down a heavy bag they have been carrying for miles. Your shoulders relax. Your breath deepens. You start to move through the world with less resistance, less defensiveness, less fear. You start to trust that you can handle whatever comes, not because you have all the answers, but because you have learned that you can survive not having the answers. You have learned that you can sit with discomfort, with ambiguity, with the not knowing, and you do not fall apart. This trust is not something you can force or fake. It is something that builds slowly, over time, through repeated experiences of choosing yourself, of honoring your needs, of walking away from what does not serve you, of staying with what does. The seventh sign is the one that brings everything full circle, and it is the quietest and most profound of all. It is the moment you realize that you have stopped telling the story, not because you have repressed it or because you are in denial, but because it no longer defines you. Someone asks you about your past, about that relationship, about what happened, and you give a brief, factual answer, and then you move on. You do not feel the need to explain, to justify, to make them understand how much it hurt, how unfair it was, how hard you tried. You do not feel the need to paint yourself as the victim or the hero. You simply state what happened, and then you let it go. And this is not because you have become cold or detached. It is because the story no longer has an emotional charge. It is just something that happened, one chapter in a much longer book, and you are more interested in the chapter you are writing now than in the one you have already read 1,000 times. This is the sign that you have truly stopped needing closure. Because closure is not something someone else gives you. It is not a conversation, an apology, an explanation. Closure is an internal process. It is the moment you stop asking the past to be different and you start accepting it as it is. It is the moment you stop waiting for someone else to release you and you release yourself. It is the moment you realize that you do not need permission to move on. You do not need understanding to let go. You do not need resolution to be free. You simply decide, on some deep, often unconscious level, that you are done. And the psyche, that wise and ancient part of you, honors that decision. It begins to reorganize itself around this new truth. It begins to let go of the patterns, the beliefs, the emotional residue that kept you tethered. And slowly, so slowly that you might not even notice it happening, you become someone new. Not someone who has forgotten, but someone who has integrated. Not someone who is unscathed, but someone who has been shaped by their experiences without being defined by them. When you look back now, from this new place, you can see the whole journey. You can see the months or years you spent in confusion, in pain, in desperate searching for answers that never came. You can see the moments you almost gave up, the moments you reached out one more time, even though you knew you shouldn't, the moments you hated yourself for not being over it yet. And you can also see the moments, small and easy to miss, when something shifted. The morning you woke up and felt different. The conversation where you realized you didn't care anymore. The decision you made that was based on what you wanted rather than on what you were afraid of. All of these moments, the painful ones and the liberating ones, they were all part of the same process. They were all leading you here, to this place where you are no longer defined by what happened to you, where you're no longer waiting for the past to give you something it never could. In this place, this inner landscape you have arrived at, it is not static. It is not a final destination. You will still have days when the past rises up, when something triggers a memory, when you feel the old ache. But now you know what to do with it. You know how to sit with it without being consumed by it. You know how to feel it without making it mean that you have failed or that you are back at square one. You know that healing is not linear, that it spirals, that you will revisit the same themes again and again, but each time from a different vantage point, with more awareness, with more compassion, with more capacity to hold the complexity of your own experience. This knowing is not intellectual. It is embodied. It lives in your bones, in your breath, in the way you move through the world. Jung believed that the goal of life is not to avoid suffering, but to find meaning in it. And meaning is not something you discover by analyzing the past until you understand every detail. Meaning is something you create by how you choose to live in the aftermath. When you stop needing closure, you stop asking the past to give you meaning, and you start creating meaning through the choices you make, the relationships you build, the risks you take, the ways you show up for yourself and for others. You start to see that your life is not a problem to be solved, but a story to be lived. In every chapter, even the painful ones, even the ones that ended badly, they are all part of the larger narrative of who you are becoming. They are all contributing to the depth, the richness, the complexity of your character. They are all teaching you something about what it means to be human, to be vulnerable, to love and lose, and somehow keep going. There's a practice that can support this process, and it is almost absurdly simple. It is the practice of noticing. Just noticing. When a memory arises, notice it. When a feeling comes, notice it. When you catch yourself spinning into analysis or blame or fantasy, notice it. You do not have to do anything with what you notice. You do not have to fix it or change it or make it go away. You just notice. And in that noticing, there is a gap, a small space between the stimulus and your reaction. And in that space, there is freedom. In that space, you have a choice. You can choose to follow the old pattern, to dive back into the story, to re-traumatize yourself by reliving it one more time. Or you can choose to simply observe, to witness, to let it be there without letting it take over. This is not suppression. This is consciousness. This is what it means to be awake to your own inner process. Another practice, if you're drawn to it, is writing. Not writing to share with anyone. Not writing to craft a perfect narrative, but writing to empty out. Write the same thing 100 times if you need to. Write the anger, the confusion, the grief, the relief. Write the questions that have no answers. Write the memories that keep circling. Write until there is nothing left to write, and then write some more. The act of putting words on a page takes the swirling chaos inside your mind and gives it form, gives it boundaries, gives it a place to exist outside of you. And once it is outside of you, you can see it more clearly. You can see the patterns you keep returning to. You can see the places where you are still stuck. You can see the ways in which you are telling yourself a story that may not be entirely true. Writing is a way of making the unconscious conscious, and the more you bring into consciousness, the less power it has to control you from the shadows. And then there is the practice of simply sitting in silence, without distraction, without trying to fix or figure out or make sense of anything, just sitting with whatever is present. This is perhaps the hardest practice of all because it asks you to do nothing, and we're not taught how to do nothing. We are taught that productivity is virtue, that busyness is proof of worth, that if we are not actively working on ourselves, we are failing. But the psyche does not work on our timeline. It does not respond to force or urgency. It responds to space, to patience, to the willingness to simply be with what is. When you sit in silence, you create that space. You give the unconscious permission to surface, to speak, to show you what you need to see. And sometimes what surfaces is painful. Sometimes it is the grief you have been avoiding, the anger you have been suppressing, the fear you have been denying. But sometimes, more often than you might expect, what surfaces is peace. A deep, quiet, inexplicable peace that has been there all along, waiting for you to stop running long enough to notice it. So here is what I want you to understand, what I want you to take with you as you move forward. The day you stop needing closure is not a day you choose. It is a day that chooses you. It is the culmination of 1,000 small decisions, 1,000 moments of choosing yourself, 1,000 times you said no to what was familiar and yes to what was unknown. It is the result of a process that has been unfolding inside you, quietly, invisibly, even when you thought nothing was changing. And now that you are here, now that you have stopped waiting for the past to give you something it never could, you are free in a way you have never been free before. You are free to live your life, not as a reaction to what happened, but as a creation of what you choose. You are free to love again, to trust again, to take risks again, not because you have forgotten the pain, but because you have learned that pain is not the end of the story. It is just one part of a much larger, much more beautiful story that is still being written. And if you found something in this video that resonated, something that helped you see your own experience more clearly, I invite you to like this video, to subscribe to this channel, to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you feel moved to, leave a comment below. Tell me which sign resonated most with you. Tell me where you are in your own process. Tell me what you are learning about yourself. Because this work, this inner work, is not meant to be done in isolation. We are all walking each other home, as they say, and sometimes just knowing that someone else understands, that someone else has been where you are, that is enough to help you take the next step. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for choosing yourself again and again, even when it is hard, even when you do not know where it is leading. You are exactly where you need to be.